All right, welcome to the Daily Faded. I'm Hetz, and this is where we get faded daily and talk about the politics and news of the day. And there is a lot to talk about today. So I hope you will get faded with me, or have a drink, or maybe a glass of milk, whatever it is you like. Welcome to the new Daily Faded Studios. It's too damn hot to shoot outside where I normally shoot, so I'm shooting inside tonight, and I hope you like the new look. It's not all that much, but I'll continue to make it better and better as we move on. Anyway, getting on to the Daily Faded. Today is August 17th, 2020, and the DNC kicked off and hundreds of people rejoiced. Yes, hundreds. Perhaps dozens, perhaps scores, maybe hundreds rejoiced. Before I get into that, let me do our daily coronavirus update. The world is now up to 22 million cases and 777,223 deaths. The U.S. is over 5.6 million cases as of today and over 173,000 deaths. Getting close to 174,000. Again, this is from the NCOV 2019 live tracker. And 635,000 cases here in California, and we're up to 11,343 deaths here. This thing isn't slowing down. Actually, yesterday's numbers that I saw reported were a little bit lower than the average of the previous days. So I don't know. I only had the totals for tonight, so I don't know how much the daily numbers were today. Before I get into the DNC, I want to talk about what happened right before the DNC, which is the Alex Morse-Richard Neal debate over the first congressional seat in Massachusetts. It was a fantastic debate. Alex Morse, we've been talking about him a lot. Richard Neal, as far as I'm concerned, Richard Neal set him up. He claimed in the debate today that he had nothing to do with it. But the evidence that The Intercept has laid out is pretty clear that this plot to destroy Alex Morse's candidacy and career comes from the very top in the Democratic Party. So I missed the very opening, but I did come in time to hear Alex pointing out that The Intercept has shown that the plot against Alex Morse started at the highest points in the Massachusetts Democratic Party. I'm saying too much tonight. Let's see. I live tweeted a bit of the debate as I was listening to it. The moderator asked Richard Neal about his corporate PAC money, and Neal started bragging about how he's raised so much money for other candidates. Then he made the claim that they always make, which is that he doesn't sign on for his donors' agenda. They sign on for his agenda. And I think every congressperson who takes corporate PAC money says that. At one point, Morse went for the jugular and started naming Richard Neal's corrupt donors, blamed corruption for Neal killing the surprise medical billing legislation to put an end to surprise medical billing. That is one of Richard Neal's legacies, blocking Medicare for All, saying he doesn't want anyone mentioning Medicare for All in the House Ways and Means Committee. Asked about defense spending, Morse talked about closing unnecessary bases, ending interventions, foreign wars, and reallocating resources to invest in domestic priorities. He also smacked Neil for voting against the Green New Deal and taking fossil fuel money at the same time. Neil's corruption is so obvious to anyone who's paying attention. But Neil just ignored his charge over the Green New Deal. He just ignored it because he can't respond to it. He did this over and over again, where Alex Morse would point out really disturbing things about Richard Neil and his record and his donations and all of that stuff. And Neil would just have to ignore the charge because there was no good answer. It made him look extremely small. At one point, Alex Morse said that Richard Neil speaks like a Republican. He speaks like a Republican. I thought that was good. And as Richard Neil is answering softball questions about race, Alex Morse starts pointing out institutional racism that exists throughout the congressional district, which again just made him seem a lot more in touch with the people of Massachusetts' 1st District. He also pointed out that Richard Neil's beloved CARES Act, which Richard Neil claims to have written, I'm sure he did, Alex Morse pointed out that it has run out because it wasn't good enough. And now we're desperate for another piece of legislation that doesn't seem to be coming. Again, because the CARES Act had such a short term and because the CARES Act, whiffed. In the end, it dropped a lot of people at a time when people needed to not be dropped. And Neil kept talking about school meetings, that Alex Morse didn't go to enough school meetings when he was mayor, despite the fact that Alex Morse said he went to 74% of the school meetings. Richard Neil was just dripping with hubris and condescension. Absolutely. So it was an interesting debate to watch. And I think Alex Morse came off really well in the debate. I think he came off really well. And hopefully it was widely watched in Massachusetts' 1st District. And he would actually have a chance of winning this race. I don't know if I mentioned it, but he gained 5 points. He made up, I think he made up half the headway. He's only 5. He cut. I'm having trouble speaking tonight. Let me smoke some more. Alex Morse cut Richard Neil's lead in half, and Alex Morse is now only behind by 5 points in the most recent polling. So only 5 points ahead, on the move, and only 2 weeks left. 2 weeks, and only 2 months, a little over 2 months left until the election. I'm sorry. Man, I'm fucking everything up tonight. I'm glad there's only 2 of you there. 2 weeks until the primary election, and he's on the move. So I'm hopeful, knock on wood, cross fingers, that Alex Morse will win that race. Now on to the main event. The Democratic National Convention opened a couple hours ago, and oh God, it was just terrible. It was just terrible. Certainly until the third half hour, until the 7:30 hour, or at least here in the West Coast, the 7:30 hour, when Bernie Sanders and Michelle Obama spoke, and they were both quite good. Meg Whitman, John Kasich, Christine Todd Whitman, and former Republican Rep. Susan Molinari of New York all spoke just tonight at the DNC, while only 3 progressives, so that's 4 Republicans tonight at the DNC, and only 1 progressive, Bernie. And then there's only 2 more progressives the rest of the week, AOC and Elizabeth Warren. But there's plenty of room for Republicans. Michelle Obama was mostly great. She spoke with a lot of gravitas, and she seemed, down to earth and real in the way that she always does. And it was easy to watch Michelle Obama. It's almost always easy to watch Michelle Obama. she did do a little bit of what sounded like voter shaming to me. And that concerned me a little bit because I don't think voter shaming is a particularly effective way to win people's support. Nobody wants to be told that they did something wrong because they voted one way or another, whether they voted for Trump or they voted third party or they didn't vote at all. I don't remember her exact words, but I found her a little bit condescending in just that one moment where she was talking about people who basically didn't vote for Hillary in 2016, one way or another. So John Kasich spoke, and earlier today, ignoring public policy polling and lying by equating the so-called left with the so-called far right, equating the so-called far left with the so-called far right, quote, "I think both parties have to have new ideas, and I think this country is moderate," said Kasich, winding up to a gentle criticism of Ocasio-Cortez. People on that extreme, whether they're on the left or on the right, they get outsized publicity that tends to define their party. I listen to people all the time make these statements, and because AOC gets outsized publicity doesn't mean she represents the Democratic Party. She's just a part, just some member of it, and it's on both sides, whether it's the Republicans or whether it's the Democrats. This is complete bullshit coming from John Kasich, right? Because who needs John Kasich to say what is and what isn't a Democrat? It's nonsense. It's complete nonsense. AOC responded on Twitter, "It's great that Kasich has woken up and realized the importance of supporting a Biden-Harris ticket. I hope he gets through to GOP voters. Yet also, something tells me a Republican who fights against women's rights doesn't get to say who is or isn't representative of the Dem party." Then she tweeted again, "We can build bridges and not lose sight of our values. It's important to remember that Kasich is an anti-choice extremist. He 100% will and has signed away our reproductive rights the moment he has an opportunity to do so. He is not a friend to workers." Look, Kasich simply made the point that Republicans can vote for Joe Biden too, is what he did. And he came out and said that. And he stood on a Y road, and it was a high angle looking down so you could see the road. So he was clearly standing at the branch in the road for some sort of beautiful symbolism. But all it looked like was he was standing on someone's crotch. It just looked like a pair of legs, and he was standing right on the crotch. Perhaps that's because I'm a kindergartner, or perhaps it's because I'm a stoner. I don't know. But let me read to you some of what Bernie Sanders had to say. He said, "This election is the most important in the modern history of this country. In response to the unprecedented set of crises we face, we need an unprecedented response, a movement like never before of people who are prepared to stand up and fight for democracy and decency and agree against greed, oligarchy, and authoritarianism. My friends, I say to you and to everyone who supported other candidates in this primary, and to those who may have voted for Donald Trump in the last election, the future of our democracy is at stake. The future of our economy is at stake. The future of our planet is at stake. We must come together, defeat Donald Trump, and elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris as our next president and vice president. My friends, the price of failure is just too great to imagine." So that gives you a sense of tone that Bernie was striking at the convention tonight. Clearly, he was trying to reach out to the Bernie diehard supporters. I think Bernie definitely does not want to take any chance that Donald Trump gets reelected and he gets blamed for it. So he's pulling out all the stakes and doing everything he can to convince as many people to vote for Biden as possible. Though there is a vocal minority of progressives on Twitter who are not voting for Joe Biden, it is not, I don't think that's representative of where most progressives are and how most progressives are going to vote. I do think most progressives are going to vote for Joe Biden. I'm not counting myself among them because I haven't decided what I'm going to do. But obviously, I'm not going to vote for Trump. But that I don't think that vocal minority on front, I do think a lot of those people have a lot to say that's important. But but I don't think you need to win those people to win the election. All that said, and Bernie came out and said he supports Medicare for all. Joe Biden wants to expand the Obamacare. And Bernie talked on and on about the improvements that Biden's plan would make to healthcare. I think as a mitigating effort for those who really are committed to Medicare for all. But in the Hill today, there was an article. Joe Biden said he's not going to pursue the public option right away if he becomes president. Instead, he will try to sign legislation to improve Obamacare first, to put some points up on the board. So they're not only caving on Medicare for all, which the country wants, they're going to put that off as well. It's infuriating. I am so tired of a government that struggles just to throw scraps to the people. It's really it's getting to be it's getting to be so that it's like France before the revolution in the United States. Let them eat cake. And of course, on the Medicare for all front, let's remember that over something like it's either 80 or 90% of Democrats support Medicare for all, 68% of independents support it, and 46% of Republicans support it. In some polls, the number for Republicans is over 50%. So despite what John Kasich thinks is moderate, and despite where John Kasich thinks the country is actually progressive and wants Medicare for all. Moving on to other news, Nancy Pelosi has called back the House to session to pass legislation to save the USPS. This is a good move and something that's important on its face, just to show the public that the Dems are doing something and doing something about the Postal Service. Obviously, it will do nothing with the Senate out of session, which is normal this time of a presidential year, especially, although it's not normal given the pandemic and given how desperately the American people need a new piece of coronavirus legislation. But I think this is a great move for Pelosi. Trump tweeted tonight about how he implied that it was purely political to have these hearings on the Postal Service next week. It may be political, but it's a good political move. Try and dampen the Republican National Convention's news cycles by doing some grilling of Postmaster General DeJoy. Hakeem Jeffries of New York and Ted Lieu of California, both on the House Judiciary Committee, have urged the FBI director to open a criminal investigation of Postmaster General Louis DeJoy. They're arguing that if DeJoy has... Do I need to wear makeup? My face is awfully pale and red all at the same time, like an Irish drunk. Well, I am part Irish, but I'm not drunk. The charge is that if Louis DeJoy slowed down the mail for either personal gain or to affect the outcome of the election, that would clearly be illegal, based on the U.S. Code. And let's not forget that Louis DeJoy has $75 million invested in competitors of the post office, other delivery services. DeJoy, for his part, has said that he will show up for the House Oversight Committee. I believe it's next Monday. Boy, that makes me happy because I can't wait to see AOC and Katie Porter grill him. As much as I love AOC, Katie Porter is masterful in these Oversight Committee hearings. Absolutely masterful. And Katie Porter tweeted today, Quote, I hope the Postmaster General comes prepared. I know I will. That is a tweet that gets me excited for what's to come. I will definitely cover those committee hearings next week. Hopefully I'll manage to watch a good portion of them. Of course, I'm now working in my living room with my daughter as she works on her 4th grade stuff. So it's a whole new exciting time. I wanted to catch up a little bit on the polling because there was a CNN poll that came out yesterday that got a lot of airtime and a lot of Twitter time, and it showed Biden only 4 points up on Trump and only 1 point up on Trump in the battleground states. So obviously that is a poll that anyone would look at and be concerned about. But I think it's really important to also recognize that an ABC Washington Post poll came out today showing Biden up by 10 points, 54% to 44%. And an NBC Wall Street Journal poll just came out, which has Biden up 50 to 41%, all of which adds up to a steady average of 7.7% on RCP. That's a 7.7% lead for Joe Biden. And that 7.7 is certainly very consistent from last week. In fact, in the last 10 polls, only 2 of them have had less than a 6-point lead for Biden. So, take from that what you will. We've seen problems in polling over the last couple of years. We've also seen polling be accurate. Like the general election polling in 2016 was actually fairly accurate. It was right on the national popular vote, but not right on a state-by-state basis, which of course is how Donald Trump won the Electoral College. Right now, I'm not worrying too much about these polls. Again, I'm not interested in Joe Biden winning, but I am interested in Donald Trump losing, which I think de facto means Joe Biden has to win. The days of the 15-point margins may be behind us because the race is going to tighten as we get closer to November, or at least it's going to tighten until and unless Donald Trump does something unbelievably stupid and offensive that gets people rooting for Joe Biden again. We can count on something like that happening, I think. So another interesting story today. Trump and the Republicans are making a massive effort to have poll watchers at polls all over the country. There was a consent decree that stopped Republicans from doing this starting in 1982. So that turned into a big deal, and the DOJ had a consent decree with the Republican Party. My connection is unstable. Please wait while we try reconnecting. Sorry about that. So the consent decree that limited Republicans in how they could use poll watchers has expired. And Donald Trump is going to have armed poll watchers at polls all over this country. It's fascist intimidation. It's nothing less than that. And I don't care if Donald Trump said he's going to pardon. He didn't say he's going to pardon. Donald Trump said he'd be open to pardoning Edward Snowden today. I don't really care because A, I don't trust him. He has tweeted 25 times or more that Snowden should be executed. So I don't trust him. And, I'm more interested in the stochastic terrorism of making his supporters think that they need people with guns at the polls to protect the polls from some kind of malfeasance. I never thought I would discuss Rush Limbaugh on this live stream, and I don't do it lightly. But I wanted to talk a little bit about what Rush Limbaugh said about Senator Kamala Harris. This is from the Daily Kos. Limbaugh calls Senator Harris a hoe. Thousands of advertisers and 100 plus pro teams and universities endorse it. Friday, August 14th, Limbaugh used 600 radio stations licensed to operate in the public interest to tell 20 million Americans that Senator Kamala Harris is a whore and mattress who slept her way up the political ladder. Rush Limbaugh announced the Biden Harris ticket has a nickname, Joe and the Hoe. He claims it's not his nickname, but he knows his a day will establish it. He made his intention clear by making sure everyone knew to spell hoe with an E, as in hoe, like hoeing a row. So technically, it wasn't ghetto slang to suggest Senator Harris was a whore. It is no secret but public knowledge that Kamala Harris slept her way up into California political life by being a very public escort and mattress for California Democrat kingmaker Willie Brown. That is what Rush Limbaugh had to say. And I have heard, living in California, I have heard these things about Kamala Harris for a while, that she slept her way to the top with Willie Brown. Now, obviously, we can't know the truth of whether that happened or not, but I'm not particularly interested in the truth of what happened there because I don't really care about it. Just about every successful woman that I've ever known has been accused at one time or another of sleeping their way to the top, or sleeping to get a deal, or sleeping with someone for this, or sleeping someone for that. And the truth of the matter is that when people accuse powerful or ambitious women of sleeping with someone to further their career, it is misogyny, plain and simple. It is misogyny. And I don't think I've ever known anyone who slept their way to the top or even to the middle. So those comments come, and it's also quite racist. Racists have always been obsessed over so-called miscegenation, right? The mixing of black woman and a white man, or a black man and a white woman. And so they've got to roll out these attacks, calling her a hoe, which, God, is so offensive. It's so offensive. And look, I think a lot of the senators are whores to big business, but I would never call them a whore and a mattress in that way. And I probably, if I were a politician, I wouldn't even call them whores to big business. I would call them something else. But that's completely separate from this. That's completely separate from this. So I felt like I wanted to touch base on these comments by Limbaugh, because these are what we're going to be hearing from the Republicans for the next 75 days, however long it is until the election. And then, frankly, if Joe Biden and Kamala Harris win, we're going to be hearing endless stuff about Kamala Harris sleeping her way to the top and being a hoe during the period in which she is vice president. Again, if that comes to pass. So, that's what we're going to hear. And then I have one more story that I wanted to do. This is from the BBC a couple of days ago. The US government has proposed changing the definition of a shower head to allow increased water flow following complaints from President Donald Trump about his hair routine. Under a 1992 law, showerheads in the U.S. are not allowed to produce more than 2.5 gallons, 9.5 liters of water per minute. The Trump administration wants this limit to apply to each nozzle rather than the overall fixture. Consumer and conservation groups argue that it is wasteful and unnecessary. The changes were proposed by the Department of Energy on Wednesday, following complaints by Mr. Trump on the White House at the White House last month. This is where we are. I'm often accused of living in a fantasy world because I visualize a better world and a government that deals with the issues that people need dealt with the most, the issues that people care about the most. And for anyone in our government to be wasting time on redefining the definition of a showerhead, this is the best form of government we can come up with. This is how we respond to a pandemic, a global crisis, an economic meltdown, racial injustice, people protesting in the streets, a fascist trying to destroy our democracy, and he's got them working on redefining showerheads. It's just unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Except for after these 3 years, anything is believable. The article continues. So showerheads, you take a shower, the water doesn't come out. This is Trump. You want to wash your hands, the water doesn't come out. So what do? You just stand there longer, or you take a shower longer. Because my hair, I don't know about you, but it has to be perfect. Perfect, Trump said. Andrew Delaski, executive director of the Energy Conservation Group Appliance Standards Awareness Project, said the proposal was silly. With 4 or 5 more nozzles, you could have 10, 15 gallons per minute powering out of the shower head, literally probably washing you out of the bathroom, he told the Associated Press news agency. If the president needs help finding a good shower, we can point him to some great consumer websites that help you identify a good shower head that provides a dense soak and a good shower, he added. So that's what I had for you tonight. Republicans and showerheads. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please hit like and subscribe, and I'll be back tomorrow night, 8 o'clock Pacific on the Daily Faded. Peace out, y'all. Thanks a lot for watching.